What is up, TYR Wodapalooza fans? Here we are with our second episode of our TYR Wodapalooza podcast, and we have a special guest today. Every time we have a guest, they're special, but he's a special man that has been to the games 8 times, podiumed at the games 2 times, multiple years at Wodapalooza. I lost count already, but he is the reigning champ with a few other Canadians as well, and they call him the Professor. And let's welcome Mr. Brent Fikowski. What's up, Brent?
Hello.
The crowd is
Yeah, I'm
going
good.
wild. Can you hear them right now?
Oh yeah.
People in
Yeah,
their
no, I'm good,
cars are
man.
clapping.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter was just crying. She fell over. So yeah, it's good to have some applause after all that hard work this morning. So,
Let's go. What time is she waking you up these days?
she's all right. Like this morning, it was like just before 7. She sleeps really well. So yeah, she's like always been a good sleeper. She's not big on the naps, but she sleeps through the night, and so we're happy with that
That's
trade-off.
good. Man,
Yeah.
that's gold. You get a kid that can sleep. That's going to add years to your life there. So sweet,
Yeah.
man. Well, we're excited to have you, brother. It's been a while. I know I run into you every now and then, and I just want to, again, just say thank you for your time here. We're going to have some fun. The purpose of the podcast, as kind of we were talking before, and for those who are listening in for the first time, is we're not really here to share insights on what the workouts are going to be for Wodapalooza. There'll be different times for that, but really this is more about just celebrating the people who make up this amazing community and their stories, and just catching up with them. So yeah, let's get into it, man. You just mentioned that you got your daughter. I know that since you've been competing for many years. When I first met you, I don't think you were married, and I don't think you had a kid, and so life was quite different back then, right? And so I'm just curious, right? Like what does training look like now in comparison to then? And what does that feel like? What does your lifestyle look like a little different than it did back then?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot's changed. I think when I first sort of started competing, I was dating my now wife, so she's kind of been the one constant. And but there was a time where I was a full time student. There was a time where I was had a full time job as an accountant, and then that turned into part time. And now I'm just full time fabulous CrossFit man, burpees for a living. And then obviously the kid came into play, and the home gym came in as well. And so yeah, it's like every bit of life is sort of a chapter and has a season, and it's hard to compare another period of time, whether it was better or worse, or they're all just different. And so I think one thing right now that allows me to still spend, quite a bit of time with my daughter and my wife is that I train like almost exclusively in my home gym. So, 90, if I train, 12 sessions a week, so that's whatever, 20, 48 a month. I'd say of those 48, maybe 5 of them are not in the home gym, maybe 3, right? So it's just like a lot, that's usually like a swim,
Yeah.
or I'll go to CrossFit Vernon and train with Jeremy Meredith, do some strength work, and occasionally go to a CrossFit gym just to just to go to gym. But I have everything I need here. So yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest change, is obviously, the addition of the kid, but then kind of the offset of that has been saving time on the commute and chit chatting with people. So in a lot of ways, I probably do more training or as much as I've ever done.
Yeah. Okay. So like the volume of training hasn't necessarily gone down significantly because of, the additions in your family life, but the way or the environment, so to speak, has changed. You feel that's pretty unique. You don't see a lot of people that you either find guys are like, I'm cool with training by myself and I can do that for the rest of my life, or I absolutely like need a community to be part of. Do you feel like you could have gotten to where you're at right now training this way the whole time? Is that part of like your persona?
Yeah, I'm an introvert. Like I get my energy from being alone, and so I do prefer training alone, and I've kind of always been like that. Even though I have trained at gyms and I have enjoyed it as well. But I do think like at the beginning of anyone's CrossFit journey, it should start in an affiliate, should start in a gym, just to have eyes on you as well from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
There's so many things, and so if you can find a place that has a good coach or a couple coaches, having them constantly give you feedback on technical things. Where now I'm in a place where my technique still needs work, but I'm not doing anything dangerous, and so I can find a lot of those technical improvements on my own or filming and sending video. But I have been training at CrossFit Vernon, like I said, doing a lot of my squatting and my deadlifting there, and I've been seeing a lot of improvement technically in those lifts because I've been getting one-on-one attention. So, there's a balance. But yeah, I prefer training alone for sure.
That's good. Well, it sounds like you know yourself, and I think if there's a lesson to be pulled from here for any younger aspiring athletes, is know yourself, right? So if you're more of an
Yeah.
introvert, don't be ashamed to say, "Hey, I don't want to be in my cave and just train by myself." Or if you're, someone more like golden retriever style, right? You need to be around people
Yeah.
all the time, and like, hey, surround yourself and go find that community that really energizes you. But then also having that understanding and awareness and saying, I've like a true professional has never completely arrived, and there's always an opportunity to like sharpen the saw, so to speak. And where can I go to get extra eyes on me to help continue to make that 1% better difference?
Yeah, and then especially in our sport, that never ends because there's just, there's 100 new gymnastics movements I could be working on with a professional every day, right? There's obviously you can never be perfect at Olympic weightlifting, and so it's just, yeah, you can definitely never take your foot off the gas and that desire to learn and improve.
Yeah. I'm curious, I guess just watching you since day one, you've always been pretty well rounded. What has been that, maybe one or two things that you've had to be more intentional and conscious about like working on in the off season so that when the test comes up, whether it be semifinals, games, or what have you, you're not looking at the workout like,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, and there's a lot of little things that might go unnoticed, or like I might have to work really hard just to stay good enough at something. So this year, for example, well, I mean, handstand push-ups has always been a thing for me, just like strict handstand push-ups. And so, it's not like I've all of a sudden had this like unveiling where I'm like winning a strict handstand push-up workout. And quite
yeah,
frankly, that's probably never going to happen. But I've had to work really hard to make sure if, a bunch of strict handstand push-ups show up in the quarters or the semis or the games, that I'm not finishing last place in that type of event. Right. So I've had to work really hard to keep that as like, you know, it still often ends up being like my worst score of the weekend or near my worst score. But it can't be last place, right? I have to find a couple guys in that group that in semis or the games that I can still beat. And so, that's a big area for me. Even this year, like something I was really proud of was finishing mid pack in that, the sandbag squat. So it's called ski bag at, the games. So you had to do, I think it was 460, 70, 60 back squats with a sandbag on your shoulder, 50, 200 pounds. And something like that in my first few years of the games would have just crushed me. I would have come last place for sure. Those like that kind of heavy repetitive squatting was always really hard for me. And, I could say that's because I'm tall or whatever, but it's just like it's a bracing thing and there's a bunch of issues. And so I've been working hard on that stuff. And so, I think I finished 20th out of 40th. And so again, that's not like an amazing finish. But for me, I knew that was 40 points essentially that I
yeah,
got that, a different version of Brent's, a different version of me, an older version of me would have come last place in that or right near the bottom, which would have been 0 points. And instead of that, I, got 40 or 45. And that's what kept me,
yeah.
in the top area. So it's
That's what's
things like
wild.
that. Yeah.
That's cool about what people don't see in the sport. They're like, oh, he finished 20th. Man, this guy really needs to work on that. And you're like, no, you don't understand. I would have finished 40th had I not. And so internally, it's a victory
Yeah.
for you. And I think again, just hearing you talk, you could tell there's a lot of wisdom there from all the years of training. I think a younger athlete would just be demoralized by a 20 place finish, and it's like that's first place for you.
Yeah.
Considering where you came from, and you were more last, and just because of the way that your body's composed or genetic or what have you. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That leads to one of the questions I wanted to ask, and just like a thought. Obviously you've I don't know if it's earned or self-given the title of professor. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about where that comes from. I know one of the things that I enjoy about watching you compete is you're strategic, you're thoughtful, you're a student of the game. I played football growing up, and one of the things that I enjoyed the most was actually watching film. And I tell younger athletes, I'm like, hey, if you want to get better at CrossFit, like watch yourself and watch others. And especially if you know the movements or the workout in advance, like you have an advantage, over someone else that's not watching, studying the game as much. So I feel like you share some of those same qualities. But tell me a little bit more about like that student slash professor aspect and how that name came to be.
Yeah, so it was given to me when I first started CrossFit in Australia at CrossFit Broadbeach. This would have been in 2012. And it was a nickname given to me by the coach there, Drew Griffith, and some of the members. The professor, as they would say it with the Australian accent, they drop the R, add an A, and yeah, it was just because I was always like breaking down workouts and talking about split times and getting analytical and exactly. I just had a conversation within the last, let's see, 2 days ago. I'm mentoring a few people, kind of playing like a assistant coach role with some athletes, and just talked about game film. You listen, you're on ESPN, and they talk about Tom Brady, and he watches more film than anyone else, and I think a lot of people like don't really know what that means. It's like a buzzword they say, and they're like, okay, but what does that look like? And so in the case of this athlete, they struggle with sandbag cleans, and so I sent him a video of it was 2022 semifinals, Lowlands Throwdown, and there's this workout with 30 reps in the middle of sandbag cleans to shoulder, right? And I was like, I love this workout because, it's like this perfect scenario where the athletes got to the bag and they're all pretty tired. They're not like exhausted, and they have to rep out 30 quality sandbag reps. And then it's like kind of near the end of the workout. So it's this perfect balance where they can't just move sloppy and get away with it. They're not so tired that they're taking these big breaks. The weight was 150 pounds for men, 100 for women. So it's just this like perfect way to see like, all right, like, how are you going to clean this bag? You have 30 reps. And so I was sending little clips of the athletes doing it to this athlete, telling them you should watch every heat, right? There's 40 men, there's 40 women, that's 80 people. You can watch all of them, and they're the best in the world, or the best in Europe. And you can watch them do sandbag cleans. I'm like, oh, this person is doing, like they're shifting one hand, they're bringing it to the lap, they're regripping, and then their muscle, like it's basically like a muscle hand clean. And then someone else is going straight from the ground to shoulder, but they're popping under it. So I'd call that like a snake clean. And then other ones doing like pause at the hip, regrip, and then they're like dropping under it and then standing up. So that'd be like a hang power clean. And so there's these kind of like different variations. They're putting their hands in different spots. So I was like, as someone who struggles with sandbag cleans, like you need to look at these. And I told them, I'm like, I think these are the two styles that are going to work best for you based on what I know about you. But ideally, you can get to a place as an athlete where you have like 10 different techniques in your arsenal. And it's like, depending on how much sand's in the bag, how heavy it is, how tired you are, what other movements it's paired with, what the judge is saying, what the standard is, whatever happens to come up,
Yeah.
you've got this virtuosity, and you're like, oh, I can do this, or oh, I can do that. Or you can look over at someone, you go, that looks cool, I'm going to try one like that. And so to me, like that's being a student of the game, and like those little things over the course of a weekend, over 15 workouts, or 6 or 7 workouts at an event like Wodapalooza, can really add up if you've got that breadth of experience, and you're like, you're not just mindlessly going through your experiences as an athlete, and you're being mindful about it. And then over time, you develop this like huge repertoire of like tricks.
Yeah.
And then, and then inevitably at every comp, like 1 or 2 or 3 of those tricks like really help. And that to me, it's fun. That keeps it interesting, as opposed to like, oh, here I go doing another workout with rowing and wall balls and burpees. It's just like, it's like, well, okay, when I do burpees today, I'm going to try like this style. I saw this, someone doing this online, like there's something different. I want to try and put my hands somewhere different, or, there's always something, and that keeps
The
it,
nuance, man.
keeps it
There's
interesting.
so little
Yeah.
things matter the most, and you don't know until you start changing things up. I always kind of chuckle a little bit when I see people that have been doing CrossFit for a while and you're not using the hook grip. I'm like, have you ever like even tried? Like I tried once and it hurt so bad. I'm like, yeah, but just try again. I promise it works.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
so
Preach to
tell
the
me a little
choir.
bit, if you had somewhat of a framework, right? Maybe you don't, but I'm gonna kind of let's see, dig a little bit here. Like
Yeah.
what does preparing and being a student look like? So obviously we're talking about like analyzing different movement patterns or different techniques for movement, but then you also talked about pacing. Like what are some things that you think about when you're breaking down a workout? Like, okay, these are things I need to do to get to really optimize my opportunity here and try to get the win.
Yeah, I would say, if you're listening to this and this all sounds like Latin, and you're like, what? Like, I've never approached my training or competing like this at all. I just go out there and I just go hard. I might have like one technical cue or one or two strategic cues. And, you know, so for me, like I'm doing far more than one of each of those for each, whether it's training or competition. And so it's like, how do you start down that path? And so there's a few things. So like the first thing I would do is get if you like something physical, you can go to the dollar store, get an address book. That's A, B, C, D, you know, you like the tabs, A, B, C, D. And so on page A, you can have, you know, air squat and assault bike. And then B, you're going to have bar facing burpee and bar muscle up, you know. So you'll have a page. Yeah, you'll have a page per movement and just scribble down notes, right? And so, you know, maybe your coach gives you a cue that you like that seemed to help, or you struggled with something. You'd be like, oh, you know, today on the bar muscle up, I was chicken winging. I need to figure this out. And just leave it at that. And then the next time you go and do bar muscle ups before the workout starts, or the EMOM or the strength work or whatever it is, or back squat, you flip it open and you say, oh, the last time I did back squats, I found that if I thought about like expanding my obliques and like, you know, really driving the bar back, like that seemed to work. So I'm going to start with that, you know, and so you're kind of picking up where you left off in your last session. Yeah. And I do this on a to-do list app. Like you can use Trello or Asana or just Notepad or something, as long as it's organized, you know, like alphabetically per movement. So that's one thing you can do. And then, you know, I add in videos. So it's like, oh, I found this, you know, video on bar muscle ups the other night or whatever. So I'm going to add that link. So the next time I go and do bar muscle ups, I open up my bar muscle up tab and I'm scrolling down, I'm looking at my notes and I'm looking at a video. Okay, you know, here's some things I can work on. So you're picking up where you left off, which is important, because if you're just a runner, like you're probably just going to remember things because you're just running, right? But with us, we have 100, 200 movements. So you might only do legless rope climbs once every week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You're going to keep forgetting, and you're just going to start from scratch, and you're just going to roll back into old habits. A year's going to go by.
The same mistake over and over again.
Yeah, my legless rope climbs haven't went anywhere. They haven't changed visually or technically, or they feel the same, and like they still suck. It's like, so, you know, so that's one thing. And then the other thing would be, you know, if you can, you know, we all have our iPhones, so like, you know, just prop your iPhone up and film your workout and watch it. And you won't really know what you're looking for the first few times you watch it, but, you know, finish your workout maybe when you go home that evening or whatever. You know, prop it up while you're eating food if you can, and maybe have a notepad and, like, you know, time some of your rests, right? Like see how long it took you to finish your deadlifts and start your handstand pushups. Or if, you know, if you had 100 toes to bar in a row, like how did I break it up? Was it 10, 10, 8, 8, 7, 7? It's like, or was it like 5, 5, 3, 1, 3, 8, 10, like huge break, chalk break, went and got water. Like, and if you see it enough, you'll be like, oh man, you know, like I should take the average of those rests, which are anywhere from 3 seconds to 30 seconds, and let's just make all of them 10 seconds, you know, and once you start to see them, then you'll start to notice that, like, oh, what I'm doing is a hell of a lot different than like what I watch when I watch the CrossFit Games or semis. And then the same thing goes for when you watch the games or semis. Like, yeah, watch it the first time and just enjoy the spectacle. But the next time you watch, you know, maybe that same workout, or if you can, try to find workouts of people doing like quarterfinal workouts, because then the camera's on them. With semis, they're like zooming in on people's butts or whatever. And it's hard to know, like, okay, but how did that person actually break it up? Like, what were their split times? Because the camera's moving around and it might not be following the right athlete that you want to see. So, you know, watch videos from quarters or the open and see what the pros are doing. Like, well, how many times are they chalking? Like, how long are their breaks? Like, what are they doing with their feet on their rope climbs? You know, things like that. So those would be places I'd start, is just start watching more film, and then start get an address book essentially, right? And just start writing down tips and tricks and cues and things that worked and didn't work for each movement. And then just start to, like, you know, add to that list. And then before you know it, after a couple sessions doing bar muscle ups, hopefully you'll be further ahead than if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
That's where I'd start.
Good. That's a good blueprint right there, man. Some like organized reflection, right? I like the address book. I was not sure where you were going with that. Oh, that's cool. What is he saying right now? I thought he was an accountant. Where's the Excel spreadsheet? But no, that's cool. And then of course videoing, and you're right. Like most people are like, what am I looking for here? But the more you do the movement, the more you start to, you know, take notice of, you know, are you on your heels? Are you on your toes? Look at this guy's stance versus the other guy's stance. Little things like that. I think
Yes.
that the fans that really enjoy the experiences of watching the sport are more there than just to celebrate their fans, but they actually like enjoy like watching the athletes and like, oh, look how this person's coming down a rope, or look at their position and how they, you know, or even just pacing. For me, pacing is really fun because you're like, oh yeah, this guy's coming out too hot, or just seeing someone really drop the hammer at the end. So that's stuff that's a little harder to find, especially when you don't like see splits on the board for the whole, I guess you could say heat, so to speak. But it's cool to see the shifting a little bit throughout a longer event, especially the fast
Yeah.
ones. Obviously, is like you blink and it's over, but the longer ones, it's nice to see some position jockeying.
Yeah, and so another thing I'll say on the address book, or again, I use an app. You can track. So like something I'll do is when I'm watching footage. So let's say there's a workout and there's 50 wall balls in the middle or 20, and let's say I go unbroken. I'll just use a stopwatch or my phone, or I'll look at the time on the video and I'll say, well, how long did those 30 take me?
Yeah,
Right. And then in the notepad, I'll write down, November 29th, 30 wall balls, unbroken mid workout in, 58 seconds. And so what you do is if you keep doing that over time, what you'll have is you'll have like reps per minute, right? So it's like I know that I can do, if I'm like for GHDs or wall balls or pistols or double unders or like all these dumbbell snatches at 50 pounds, dumbbell snatches at 70 pounds, like you kind of know your top end speed. If I'm like
right.
sprinting, you're like, oh, like I'm intentionally moving fast, or like my slow speed, but I'm still going unbroken. And all those are going to be different a little bit, right? So if you start to do that, it's going to allow you to pace better and know yourself better. So someone says, hey, this workout's 50 cal row, 40 dumbbell snatch, 30 wall ball, 20 burpees, 10 ring muscle ups. How long is that going to take you? And most people, not most, there'll be some people that go, I have no idea.
Yeah,
Like you just like know, and it's like the only way you know that is go, well, how long does 40 dumbbell snatches take me? It's like, well, it's going to take me 1.9 seconds per rep. So you start doing the math. You're like, okay, if I go unbroken, it'll do this. I'm going to take one break, and I know from watching video that a break for me is going to be 3 to 10 seconds, depending on how tired I am. So okay, it's going to take me 5 seconds. So I know if I hold a certain pace on the row and I have a 6 second transition to the dumbbell, I take one break and I finish that. I can tell you within 5 seconds when I'm going to be walking to the wall ball.
yeah,
Right. And so but you don't know that if you don't watch the film, and you don't know that if you don't start writing down your reps per minute. Right.
yeah. 100%. It's like you spend almost more time analyzing the workout, prepping for the workout than the workout actually takes when you're at your
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. Sometimes.
That's what it
Yeah.
looks like, guys, for sure. The game before the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, man, you've accomplished a lot. Just kind of transitioning a little bit, right? Because of the fact that not only do you train the way you do, you live the way you do, and I do believe that your intentionality and being a student is one of the things that sets you apart. You've accomplished a lot in the sport. I believe, and we don't yet have like a Hall of Fame in the sport, but if we did, I think that you'd definitely be a candidate for it, right? You've just accomplished
Yeah.
so
That's
much
all
and
right.
you've been so consistent, And one of the things as well is I know that you had, a few years where maybe you didn't end up where you wanted to after like podium finishes. You just showed that you weren't going to fade and that you were resilient and you went back to work and you bounced back. And so, yeah, man, I think it's really cool to see the legacy that you've had. I'm curious, out of all the years, and are there some moments that really stand out to you? They're like, man, these are moments that I'm going to cherish for a long time. It could be at a local event or at a CrossFit Games event where there's some times where you're like, these are really good memories that I have.
Yeah. There's so many. Right. And I think when it's all done, I don't know what I'm going to do, make a scrapbook or something. I haven't really hung anything up in the house because I feel like that would be a sign that it's over, which it isn't. Um, I think what's interesting is you talk about setbacks, and really the moments for me that have the most meaning are the ones that came after a setback,
Yeah,
right? Like 2021 coming third at the games, having the 2 years before that where I got cut both times, and barely, and even like just barely making it through the semifinal because it was online because of COVID that year, and then going there and like dealing with some self-doubt, and and then coming through and having the leader jersey for a couple days or a couple workouts, sorry, and then finishing third. And even this year, like I had a bad year in 2022. I wasn't particularly happy with how that went. And, being a little older too, is like 31 years old. And I'm like, oh, is this the end? Like, are the best days behind me? And like really taking like a good hard look at my training, talking to my coach, like kind of changing coaches and like really like taking, I mean, at the time it felt like risks where it's like, oh, you have to change a bunch of things with how you're training and how you're approaching your training to get back in the mix as one of the top guys. And, went out on a limb and, did some things and then, they worked out. Right. And so like taking those risks and the irony is that I took risks the year before too. Like I finished in 2021, a third, and we're like, all right, we're going to win. And then, made decisions in training and then they didn't pay off. Right. I think like, honestly, for me, like coming back this year, finishing fourth in the world, finally cracking through to the games after 2 years of disappointment. And so the funny thing is if you're listening to this and you feel like you're not achieving what you want to achieve, or you've had some slumps or whatever, it's like, that's, if it's, you get to write the next chapter, right? Like you're the author of the next chapter. And so, the good books are the ones with adversity and then they overcome. Like that's the classic, hero's journey. And I'm sure if you talk to someone like, I think we can look at someone like Frazier and go, oh, he just won all the time. He was dominant. He just couldn't lose. It's like, well, he had that first, that second, he came second and then he came second again to Ben Smith. And his perspective the first year, I think, was, I won silver. I'm really proud of silver the first year. And then the next year, he felt like he lost first. Like he could have won first, but he just messed it up. And then he really took a good hard look at things and trained harder and trained smarter and came back and won. And I would imagine that first gold was probably the most satisfying of the 5 in a row I don't know, like, I can't say that for sure, but without that setback, he probably maybe wouldn't have had the fire or have learned the lessons needed. If he just won the first year against Ben Smith there, he might've just been like, oh, I did everything right, coasted along, didn't have that adversity, and he probably wouldn't have won 5 in a row. He would have got complacent, right? Maybe, And so I guess for me, like the things that stand out for me that I'm the most proud of are like this year coming 20th in the sandbag, because I put so much work into that type of event and knowing like internally that was something I had to work really hard for. And that was one of the big reasons I jumped from, 16th in the world to 4th. So it's things like that.
That's big, man. I think I like a quote that says, adversity will introduce a man to himself, right? And so you really get to learn about who you are, what you're made out of when you face adversity. And I don't know, I haven't followed every CrossFit Games athlete's career, but I don't think many have that story where they've, shown like, all right, I'm a podium level athlete, fallen off, not completely like you didn't make it, but like fallen off and then made it back consistently as they're aging. I think one of the reasons why people struggle is I feel like our ranking, because it's only like one event a year, you almost start to hold a belief about who you are and where you're at as an athlete that's contingent on that rank, right? And so like if you drop, I'm sure, like you mentioned earlier, just a little bit of self-doubt, like, do I really have what it takes to make it back to the podium? And then, oh, that happens 2 years in a row. That confidence is really starting to dwindle. So the fact that not only did you have the confidence, the training to back it up and the strategy and what have you, because there's always, the science and the lifestyle. But I think more important than all of it is really the mindset that you still continue to believe in yourself and that you were capable to be where you once were. That's cool.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's interesting in our sport, like you, in a lot of ways, like, your pedigree as an athlete in our sport is like, how many times did you make the games and what were your rankings there? And everything else is like a pretty deep trough after that, and not to say that, winning Wodapalooza, doing well at Wodapalooza, or qualifying to that or semis and so on. But I joke to people, I'm like, oh, you could come, third at Rogue and like first in Dubai and fifth at Wodapalooza, win the Open, win quarters. If you go to semis, you don't make the games, your season was a failure. Like in most people's minds, it's like, what are you doing? Like, whereas if it's the other way around, you do terrible at all those events, you just barely make it to the games. You go to the games and you come second or fifth or something. People will be like, oh man, like timed it perfectly. Great year. Right. Like that's kind of.
I was just peaking, man. I was peaking at the
just peaking.
time. Well, on this podcast, all that matters is your Wodapalooza's finishes. Okay. So whatever else you got doesn't matter.
That's right.
No, I'm
And so
kidding.
I would like that to change a little bit in the sport around like the media, and then just more touch points. Because in something like golf, you're competing at how many majors, and if you win 3 majors, you're like having a hell of a year, and that can be amongst a dozen other majors where you did okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't compete as much just because the nature of what we're doing is like more taxing on our bodies than playing golf. But yeah, no, it's an interesting sport in that regard, and I do think that yeah, the things I cherish the most, and then there's other things too, like like winning an event at the games. Like obviously those like little moments of jubilation and stuff are a lot of fun, but it's like the deeper feeling of satisfaction definitely comes from like a year worth or multiple years worth of hard work, and then like finally kind of overcoming something, whether that be qualifying for the games for the first time, or getting myself back up into the top positions at the games. And yeah,
Yeah.
I still believe that the best is yet to come. So
I love that. Well, I'll just share
yeah.
mine for you as an outsider of someone who just saw you come on the scene. I was still running and organizing Wodapalooza back then, but you came in as a team athlete, and man, you won. But not only did you win, then you just like were the most funny and obnoxious like winners of the event, where you started taking like bubble baths with the trophy. Do you remember that, Ian?
Oh yeah, I almost choked on the bubbles. Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
that was hilarious. And then for those who don't know, because this is not like public knowledge, we've never like actually put it out there, but it's so far in the past that we'll make it knowledge now. But I remember having to like call you like a couple of days after the event and be like, hey, bro, like you didn't actually win. Like you did, but you didn't. Like we had a scoring mess up. And so you did win, but we did have a scoring mess up. So we made you guys co-champions, and we had to pay out double because we just ended up paying you both for first place. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
I remember
I
having a
remember
really tough conversation. It's
that.
like, damn, I'm gonna have to call this guy. This is so hard.
Yeah, one of the many instances that led to my desire to form the
There
PFA.
you go. Okay, it stems back from way back then. That's good.
Origin
Well,
story.
let's jump into that, a little more of a serious topic. But so the PFAA stands for Professional Fitness Athletes Association. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. It sounds like that's something that you've been working hard on with a few others for quite some time. For those who aren't listening, tell us a little bit more about like what is it and why does it exist?
Yeah, so a lot of major sports and professional sports have athlete associations, right? And they're there. Their sole purpose there is to look out for the needs of the athletes, and for the purpose of ours, like our sport is, there's so many people that do it, right? There's a couple 100,000 people that do the Open, and so to kind of narrow the focus of the athletes we're directly trying to impact and help, we're defining them as professionals, and we have criteria on that for membership. But basically, the athletes going to the biggest events, competing in the elite or the pro division at those events. And just the base of it is just trying to improve the competition experience, right? Trying to increase fairness and safety at events, so that when you leave a competition, you're like, oh, I placed where I belonged, I didn't get hurt, and I don't feel like I have to. I was talking to someone who's going to this local competition with some kind of weird workouts, and I'm like, you shouldn't have to balance. When I was thinking about safety, you shouldn't have to balance the desire to go fast and safety. Like there shouldn't be you shouldn't feel like as an athlete there's a trade off where you're like, oh man, like I could go faster, but that's going to get more and more unsafe. Um, and I can't remember the exact example, but anyway, if you think of some really bizarre like movements or something, or it's like, ooh, like the faster I go doing that, like upside down, carrying a rock on my head and backwards on a platform, like I can do it kind of slow and cautious, and I'll get a fine score. But if I really go fast, like I'm really risking something here.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
race at the end of the day, so you don't want to eliminate. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, safety and fairness, and then just like something that we've kind of identified, like obviously on top of that, that's not as sexy, and those are the things we're working on with Wodapalooza. The partnership we have are just the safety and fairness things, right? Just improving communication, improving standards of movements, improving the logistics flow. And we've got a 5-page document for anyone who wants to read it. It's on the Wodapalooza has it on a 7-page document. Actually, I have it up here. It's on the Wodapalooza website. It's on the PFA website. I think I have it in my like link in bio and stuff as well. And, it's just a bunch of standards that the Wodapalooza is going to hold themselves to run a quality event. And then on top of that, we've talked to the pro athletes and we all want a better season. Right now what we have is we have this sort of this 6-month CrossFit Inc. season that's sort of like the American Idol season where, everyone gets to join and then most people go to your like area and semis and then there's the world championship. And it's not like a bad system, but there's not a lot of nuance to it. And there's a lot of flaws to it as well. Like the most obvious one being, if you have food poisoning the first weekend of the Open, your entire 6-month season is done. And then also, in order to go to Rogue, to go to Wodapalooza, to go to Dubai, it kind of comes down to did you make the games and how well did you do? So really, your entire 12 months is predicated on a single, the Open. It's like, oh, did I have food poisoning, or maybe I have a small injury, or what if, my wife's going into labor and I can't be at the gym for those 3 days, yet I've made the games 10 years in a row. It's like, is that, there's got to be a better way. So, improving the season, then the off season, like what we call the off season, the other 6 months in the calendar year, have a lot of great events, right? They have Wodapalooza, they have Rogue, they have Dubai. Not a lot of opportunities for people to compete at lower levels than like the tippy top pros. And I'm lucky that I have a lot of opportunities to compete. So we want more opportunities for more people of more skill levels to compete in meaningful competitions that can then raise them up, if they have the ability, to the next level. And because, there was a time even with regionals where it was a dream of people to make regionals, right? And I think back in like 2012, there were 7 regionals in North America and like 48 spots at each or something. So that's a lot of people. That's like 350 men, and now it's 80, right? And there wasn't really anything that filled in that gap as far as like, oh, you can't make regionals anymore, or now it's semis. Like, here's other competitions of your skill level to go to. It's like, it's not like there's more of those now.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't do a lot to grow the sport. And then, Wodapalooza, Dubai, all those events, like they're great. And I'm happy to go to them. And like the prize money is amazing. But it'd be nice if they also existed within like a cohesive season, right? Where you're gaining points, or there's like a cohesive storyline, and then you have something to talk about throughout the year where people are making moves. It's like, oh, Laura versus Tia, who's going to be the next? It's like, oh, we have to wait 9 months to wait for that. They're not going to compete again for another 9 months, Laura and Tia, right?
Yeah, and it's
Roman and Pat aren't going to compete again for another. Well, I think they'll be at Wodapalooza, but like, so it's like you want to have like continuous touch points, and the athletes, they want to have more opportunities to compete against the best and have a more year round, like not 12 months in a row, but more year round competition season. So.
100%. I love it, man. I think a lot of people have these thoughts and ideas, but no one's really been as intentional as you've been to actually, like, put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, and put action, to it all. So it's cool to see that things have come together. What's your vision for where this could be? That's, I don't know, 5 years from now.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors determining whether that's going to happen. Me and the team, we're going to do our best and, try to look at it from every perspective, but certainly the athletes first. And yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I'd like to see more opportunities for athletes to compete in CrossFit or functional fitness, whatever we want to call it, whether it's, IF3 events or CrossFit Inc. events or more Wodapalooza branded events, or maybe they're all under the same banner. It's like, it doesn't really matter. But, I think, even like if you look at what Hyrox is doing, right, they've got like a series of events in this like pro tour, and they're getting sponsors. And it's like, it's like, oh man, it's like gaining some real momentum. And there's a coach here in Kelowna that I spend some time with, and he has, a handful of athletes that he coaches online, and 3 of them are just told him, like, you know what, I'm not training for CrossFit anymore. I'm training for Hyrox. Like, can you coach me for that? And he said, sure. Because it's something, it's like, it's real, it's tangible. There's like, oh, I can go to this event and do it. Whereas a lot of it right now, if you're 20 something and you're like pretty good at CrossFit, like, what are you training for? Quarters? Hopefully I'll make semis. I have to be the top 80 in North America. And if you don't do that, like, hopefully Wodapalooza, and like, you guys obviously have like a ton of spots, right? Like thousands of people, but it's still really hard to qualify for, right? Because it's super alluring. Like, it's something people want to go to Wodapalooza. So it's like, I want there to be more opportunities to compete in like meaningful events against people of your skill level. It's like, there should be, if you're an Olympic weightlifter that lives in my city, you can compete once a month within almost a short flight or a drive against people of your skill level.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're world class, you got to fly a little further away because you're world class. You have to travel around the world. But if you're like, 30th best weightlifter in North America or 50th or whatever, there's tons of opportunities for you to compete in Olympic weightlifting. There's just not a lot of cohesive opportunities that all can like clearly build towards, oh, if I keep getting better, I'm going to climb this ladder. I'm going to compete against people better than me. It's sort of this really top heavy thing we have right now where, yeah, like me and Vellner, we have lots of opportunities. But other than that, like pretty slim. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see that, and obviously our focus is on the professionals like me and Pat, but we need that base as well. Just like in CrossFit, you need an aerobic base, strength base in order to do the cool, sexy stuff. It's like we have the cool, sexy stuff, the pros, but like if we don't have opportunities for other gym goers, more recreational athletes to compete regularly, it's hard to sustain. So that's kind of where I want it to be. I want to see like more opportunities for athletes that I know and I mentor a bit here. Like they should have places they can drive to and fly to quickly, where it's like, oh, I competed against men and women of the same skill level as me, and it was a good battle, and I'm excited to do it again because that's what keeps people coming back.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love it. And it sounds like it's not just for the pros, but it's to professionalize the sport and give someone a little bit more of a linear pathway and what it looks like to actually get to the games and know if you're actually have a chance, whether it be the games or just like the top level, right? Um, where they can go to a local competition like you mentioned, but how do you know the level of the people that you're competing against? If everyone had a worldwide rank, like tennis players, they have
Yes.
worldwide ranks, right? And they go to a tournament, they accumulate points, and it re-ranks them every so often, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, so it again could help as well, of course, professionalize the sport for the high end professionals like yourself, but then those who are aspiring to be, because if you don't have a system, yeah, I really feel like the sport is just as exciting and as beautiful as it is, can become stagnant and not really experience the growth that it has the potential to. So
Yeah.
this is cool,
We're on
man.
the same we're
Yeah,
on the same page, man. And most people I talk to are. It's just about getting the right people, on the right calls in the right rooms, and kind of agreeing on a path forward and making it enticing to the people with can make those decisions, and then yeah, pulling it off. So I think people want it. Like people want to compete more. They want more opportunities to compete. But it's we all want to be on ESPN every weekend or whatever it is, right? Like all
yeah,
these things are easy to say, but like to pull it all off and get the right people agreeing is challenging. But I think it's doable. It'll take some time, small baby
sure.
steps. But and honestly, like this is all intentional. Like in order to have a world rank, in order to have athletes of different calibers, you need events of a different caliber, and in order to have events of a different caliber, you need to define, well, what is a elite event or a series of tests that make up an elite event, and what is a intermediate event. And that's kind of where we're starting here with Wodapalooza, right? It's like you need guidelines for this event to follow, so that I don't go, let's say there's someone who goes to an intermediate comp, like, all right, workout number one is ring muscle ups in a vest and 800-pound deadlifts. You're like, well, I can't do any of these things. They're like, well,
Yeah,
why not? Come on, toughen up. And you're like, well, I'm an intermediate athlete. And so you have to kind of start defining, like, an intermediate athlete can do these things or will be
correct.
tested in these things. So it's a lot of work, right? But once it's all done, or once it's more or less done and people agree on it, it becomes a lot more exciting. You strip back a little bit of the unknown and unknowable, have a few guardrails, a few standards, so you know what you're getting in for. And I think people would really enjoy that type of system. But it's a lot of work. So, but we're
I
willing
love
to do it.
it, man. Well, I'm grateful that you're doing it. I'm excited to see what comes from it.
Yeah.
Will we be seeing you at Wadapalooza this year?
Hell yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm really excited. Yeah,
competing
I'm really
individual
excited.
team. What are you doing?
So just individual this time. So Thursday, Friday, competing individual. Yeah, I'm excited. Training's going well. I want to win the thing. This year I finished fourth like four times. Uh, so just another year of
One for four.
comeback. So hopefully this will be the year of the podiums. And 2023 was the year of fourth place for me. Fourth at Wodapalooza, fourth at the games, fourth at Rogue, second at
Nice.
semis. So I'm like, hey, let's get a few of those on those top three spots.
Let's
So
get a
I'm
number
excited for
one up.
that. And then, some of my favorite Wodapalooza memories are the years I just came to, like, mingle and stuff. And so Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to just try and completely fill my day with, like, I've got I'm doing this activation thing with Ascent Protein, like a fan workout thing. I'm going to do some like live podcasts or Q&As or signings, booth signings, like all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited for Saturday, Sunday, just to hang out and kind of enjoy and maybe get there early and go to some of the booths, best vendor village in the world. So I'm always
Love it.
excited to see what the new products and stuff are. So try and get there early before people swarm me. But yeah, it'll be fun.
Sweet, man. Well, we're pumped. We're pumped to see you compete under the lights
Yeah.
again, throw you in the
Yeah.
ocean, get you doing
Hell
some
yeah.
fun stuff out there. And well, I appreciate your time. I'm going to close off with one question just because, the spirit of Wodapalooza, we're all about celebrating. And I think for someone who comes to Wodapalooza, the celebratory spirit is already there. But I think it's cool if you come in already with knowing like, hey, this is, what I'm celebrating, right? I'm coming in with this spirit of gratitude, and I want to kind of just carry that and spread that throughout, the event and everybody that I touch. And I think you do that naturally. I'm just curious what the question is, what in your life right now is worth celebrating you're going to bring forth when we get to see you in January?
Yeah, I think well, I mean, obviously, the obvious answer is my family. Like that's what came to my mind first, like my daughter and my wife, and I think they'll be there.
All right.
But like I think I'm also like to kind of tie it a little more into fitness because if I'm being frank, when I'm on the competition floor, I'm not thinking about them. I'm like I got too many other things to worry about, and then when I'm done, obviously I think about them, and I hope that doesn't come off as crass. But it's like I'm thinking about how many reps I have left. Like I don't think about anything else.
About the
Um,
way you're picking up the sandbag.
yeah. It's like there's, it's kind of a just like when I'm with them, I don't think about training. But for me, like I think something, I've been enjoying training as much as I ever have, and I said to my wife the other day, I was like, I feel like with how well it's been going and how much I'm enjoying it, I feel like I'm really starting to crack the code on what works for me. I was like, I almost, I wish I'd learned all this sooner. Like I wish I'd been training this way sooner. And so I really just want to like, while I still have all this fitness and, I really want to just like put it on display and just celebrate like what I have in a way and just try to put on, just like kind of, I was saying to someone like learn and train like you're going to train and learn forever, but compete like it's your last time, And so I think like when I compete at Wodapalooza, and I hope whenever I compete, people can see like the intensity and the passion and the focus and the drive and like, oh, like he's a professional in like, not in that he's a certain ranking, but like there's this level of like passion that's like, exuding off of him and like focus that like, you could put your hand in front of his face and he wouldn't even notice you were there. Kind of that like Kobe Bryant clip, right? With the ball fake thing, like kind of like that. And so that's what I want to bring and celebrate that. And hopefully people, if they haven't seen me compete before, and if they do get to see me, maybe they can appreciate that and maybe they can take that to somewhere in their life, whether that's in fitness or in their job or even in their, that kind of laser focus. And I suppose that circles back kind of succinctly to what I was saying about, my wife and my kid. Like when I'm competing, like I'm not thinking about
Present.
that, right? Like quite frankly, I'm in the moment, like I'm in my shoes and I'm where my feet are and I'm there, right? And it's just this like 100%, like I'm going to do everything I can to go 1 second faster. And then when I'm with them, it's the same, right? It's like I'm just trying to soak up like this moment in time with my daughter because she's only going to get older. And, like soon, like she's just going to change. Every day she changes already. So it's kind of that same thing. And so hopefully that's kind of what I want to celebrate is like the moments, right? And like the team at Wodapalooza puts in so much energy and effort to create this aura when you come in. There's the pink, there's the blue, there's the lights, there's all this fitness equipment. There's these, it's like, it's this crazy thing, right? And so if you're coming there as a fan for a day or 3 days to compete or to watch, it's like, I want to celebrate, like just like enjoy it. Like you spent your money, you spent your time, you've been looking forward to it, and just like embrace the chaos and like the rain or whatever hopefully no rain. But yeah, like that's what I hope to bring is celebrate that, like that energy and that like, just being there and not thinking about anything else for, a day or a minute or, the weekend.
That's beautiful, bro. Thank you for
Yep.
sharing that. It really has been it's funny that when you said what you're going to celebrate, it basically described this experience, this conversation that I've had with you. I feel the passion, I feel the focus, I feel the drive, I feel the love that you have for not just training, but also competing, and how, the things that you're doing for the sport to further the sport, they don't seem like they're coming from a selfish place. They're coming from a place of true passion. that you have for, the sport and this community. So it's exciting, man. I'm excited. I don't have to drive too far to come see you, but anybody that's listening in and maybe you haven't decided to punch that ticket, Brent is going to be one of those thousands of people that are out there pouring out his heart, focused, dialed in, and that'll inspire you and entertain you all at the same time. So we're grateful for this time. Grateful for you. You're a gift to this community. I mean that. Thank you for everything.
No,
You do.
thanks, man. You are too. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm stoked. I was thinking. Obviously, I'm going to London here for an event, but I've been starting to think about Wodapalooza. Been going for some swims, and yeah, I'm really excited. I'm
Nice.
very excited about Wodapalooza this year. Probably more than the last year, so it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
big thanks again to TYR as a title sponsor to Wodapalooza. You guys, there we go. We're both sporting it, rocking our TYR gear. And yeah, man, enjoy your holidays, and I'll see you in January, brother.
Yeah, man. See you then.
Thanks again. Take care.